today's episode, we're joined by Patricia Cazorla, a wonderful artist, a gallerist, a professor, an all-around expert in the art field who's going to tell us how does the art world work. Patricia, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here and an honor to be considered an expert in the art world.
Patricia, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your background. You're originally from Venezuela, and I wanted to know, how did you get started as an artist? Was that, of the three hats you've worn, because you have done academic teaching, you've run a commercial gallery for many years, you've worked in a nonprofit art gallery, and you are also a practicing artist with a focus on public art. So when you were first starting in the art world, which avenue was the first one that drew you in?
Definitely back in Venezuela, I decided to become an artist at the age roughly 16. But I was passionate about art. My gosh, since age 7, when I was watching by myself opera in the TV those days.
One moment. Did you say Oprah or opera?
Opera.
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 Okay,
Opera.
Oh, opera.
Opera.
Opera. Okay, yes. Okay.
So, excuse my accent. It's still there. Even I moved to New York in the late 90s.
Perfect.
How do you two meet?
That's an interesting question. When I became the director of the Lehman College Art Gallery 8 years ago, the gallery was in a real kind of bit of turmoil. There was a lot of staff turnover, and Patricia had worked there a number of years previously, and I had nothing to do with it, but some of the remaining staff people sort of dragooned her to come back in for a period of months to sort of help me find my feet and my footing. And the first thing we did was curate a large show together called Bedazzled, and I was bedazzled by Patricia's skill and knowledge and her ability, a particular ability, I think, particularly with curating, to it's not coddle. What is the word? To draw in difficult artists and pull them into our agreement to be in the show. And I think probably of all the shows I've worked on in the last 8 years, that probably had the most ambitious artist list when you think about how artists, how the art world works. It was a real coup to get a lot of the people who were in that show in that show. So we've been friends ever since.
Yes.
And I was holding onto her leg when she left the gallery, but I mean, it's wonderful we've been able to continue our professional relationship.
Definitely was love at the first sight.
There's a lot of kind of institutional interest in showing local artists, in our case, dedicated to the Bronx. But for all of our shows, the gallery, Lehman College Art Gallery, has had the mission of showing very famous artists with mid-career working artists with emerging local talents. And it's really sort of the mixing up of the conversations that could be had among those three groups that I think is very important, particularly for the younger emerging artists, not just to be sort of geographically bound or just show with people down the street from them, but to have access and have that conversation with the larger art world.
That's a wonderful opportunity. You gave that to me too.
That's right.
It's always nice to be, showing with really
That's how we met,
artists.
Right?
How do we find the bigger artists, and how do the bigger artists succeed? That's one of the very important questions. Like I was talking to my brother who heard the podcast, and he said there's the Pareto distribution principle. I'm like, what are you talking about? So he says basically 20% of the people have the money, or like it's like always one artist is really, really big. It makes all the money. And then the 80% doesn't get anything. It's like he said, he made the analogy of the sports. Like Shaquille O'Neal makes, I don't know how many millions, and the rest of the team makes much less.
The winner take all principle. Right?
Exactly. Apparently it's called Pareto.
Oh. I have no idea.
What are you thinking, Matt?
I'm thinking, well, I was interested about in your public art practice, because anytime I've been on any kind of panel or any kind of involved in any way with public art, it's a nightmare. Getting things approved, getting, everyone being happy, getting to be able to work, budgeting, all that stuff. But you seem to thrive in that world. And
Thank you.
How maybe talk about that, because how does that work?
I'm very fortunate to be working collaboration over 10 years, becoming 14, with my auntie, Nancy Saleme. Public art has been much more friendly with artists because there is a lot of entities, a lot of agencies behind, a lot we just finished a huge, beautiful, well, beautiful to me, a very complex piece together in collaboration with Audible, inside Audible, because their headquarters are in Newark, and they made a huge open call to local artists. We have a couple of studios, and the big one, our heart is in Newark, at PS Studios, Project for Empty Space, run by Rebecca Jampol and Jasmine Wahi. Those are superstars in the art world, I have to say. And so through Audible, we created this work, and without them going through all the red tapes, we would have been. And that takes like 60% of the weight of creating something. Um, it is true. It is difficult to deal with a committee which is integrated by people from the community and different key leaders in the community, and depends on where the piece is gonna go. You gotta be organized. There's no way.
Well, do you think that's because, I mean, a lot of the public art you've been doing has been through governmental or quasi-governmental agencies where
Yes.
they're sort of laying the groundwork
Yes, for
for
you.
for the public art to occur?
Absolutely. And that's kind of new. That's
Yes.
kind of new. From when we started, 2010 or so, it's going really popular. It's especially in collaborative, community-based public art, coming to it could be a performance, art together with some kind of interaction in the streets. It has been taking different shapes and forms. This kind of new phenomenon kind of thing. The other great agency is that we work with amazingly with Health and Hands Plus Hospitals art in medicine program, which is back to the times of work progress administration. That was amazing. That was the first piece that we did together with the community from the Bellevue Hospital, for instance, and that was incredible. It really breaking boundaries. It's a new way of making artwork, very rewarding, I have to say.
I was just in LaGuardia Airport. It's all been
Oh
revamped.
my
It's
God,
full of new
yes.
art, and yeah, it's fabulous. You just wonder how these artists that are being exhibited all over LaGuardia got there. How did they get?
Yeah.
How did they choose the artists? It's like that's the
Right.
question.
I mean, ultimately, public art is always work for hire. And that's very different, I think, than having the totally pure vision of the artist. You have to take into account you're being commissioned to do something
Mhm.
specific. And many times the organization commissioning you has an idea in their head of what they want. I remember once I was working on a project in Tarrytown, New York, and I don't know if you remember that Tarrytown was the scene of Washington Irving and the Headless Horseman. And the people who came, who were the community representatives, and when people say they're representing the community, it's always a little bit shadowy who exactly they are. Concerned citizens, capital C, came in and they pounded the table on the first meeting and said, "We don't want anything about the Headless Horseman at all." And I think that crushed about 3 of the artists who were in contention right there, who, of course, weren't living in Tarrytown and were sort of delighted by that imagery and wanted to run with it. The people living in Tarrytown may have been sick of it and didn't want to look at it on a day-to-day basis. So there are always that, and then there are the people who are running the arts program who often may have their own kind of agenda that they're looking at. They may have artists that they are favoring, and may sort of give credence to or say, "Have you looked at this person, or have you given them a second look?" And then there's the kind of material that the artist is doing. Does their work translate into
Mhm.
stained glass, for
Mhm.
instance? Or,
Mhm.
can a
Mhm.
concept drawing, someone
Mhm.
who's a wonderful painter, for instance,
Mhm.
can that material be what is often termed in the business prison grade materials? If you're facing the New York City public, you have to have something that's going to be truly going to be able to endure that. So, and that's a challenge for a lot of artists.
Do you find working with prison grade material satisfying?
One of our biggest strengths is color, uh, because Nancy also and we both have very different sense of color sensibility or color sensibility. But Nancy comes from a textile designing background and in academic beaux-arts or academic fine arts, but also heavy in design, which I was going to add to what Bart was saying. It happened that I survived New York City through having gigs as a graphic designer all these years. And I don't feel like my career and my sensitivity of being an artist is threatened by somebody tells me I don't like that. Not at all. We are okay. You don't like it? Okay, fine. You don't like that. I change it. We change it. We can change it. And not 300 times, but we will change it. It's not doesn't hurt our feelings.
So
And
I've
I can see
seen
so many artists they do not like that.
they don't like it.
Oh, not at all.
So it's good to be flexible.
It
But I
is.
saw on you, I don't know where I was Googling you and I saw something about
Thank
you guys were doing something on the pavement, like some yellow
Ah.
marks all over the pavement, like really big.
Actually, the Garment District Alliance is doing a lot for the area constantly. And then this time, remember, we were going to, in the second year of closing the streets, closing two large um, blocks and created sitting areas and times to have during the summer times time to the community enjoy and have some quality time be in the middle of Times Square in the middle of in between Macy's and Times Square. And oh my God, that was a dream. I remember that I never have felt that so amazing in my life, like painting
Yeah.
the
I
streets.
saw that piece when you debuted it. I was actually there, I think, when you had the ribbon cutting for it. And it was
Yes, yeah.
unbelievable to have just that volume of people. I mean, I think that's what's so wonderful that a lot of very well-known artists will actually, cope with having their design interfered with or picked at, because there's something, for instance, the subways. We
Oh,
all ride
yeah.
the subways. We all have seen. We all know in our minds our favorite pieces in various subway stations. And for an artist, I think it's kind of the
Yeah.
ultimate kind of populist triumph that thousands and thousands and thousands of people are
Yeah.
seeing their piece every single day. And it's certainly a much broader when we talk about the museum world or heaven forbid the gallery world. It's certainly a much more egalitarian or more representative segment of the population would be
Mhm.
using the subway than necessarily going to art galleries in Chelsea.
No,
Mhm.
it's so
For
important.
instance.
It's really important. I like to have art in public places where people can really appreciate it.
The thing is that when you make public art, it's not, if you can do a very good rendering, you have to do a rendering. And that takes time. You have to deal with measurements. It's like an architectural
So, but if you're
presentation.
if you're at that stage of
Mhm.
making the rendering, that means you already have a connection with whoever.
No, if you
going
we apply to things. They are open calls.
So you're doing those proposals cold.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's the most
Frustrating.
painful.
Yeah.
Frustrated of the most. They ask you for a proposal. They don't even ask you for if you qualify for the project.
So you
No,
ask you want,
straight they ask you for a proposal. I think they just want to steal your ideas. I don't know. Sometimes.
they could.
They
So
could.
the things that you like are there's a proposal to propose.
They're
You're
Invited to propose?
Invited to propose
They
too.
invite you.
Yes, that's true.
So-
Those are two. Those are different ones. Yes,
Okay, and then they give
Yes.
you a budget
A
to
little
make
budget. A prototype.
Yeah, great. So
Mhm.
I guess for me, if I'm thinking about an artist trying to break into this public art world, what
Mhm.
I'm trying to summarize this in my head, but
Sorry.
you sort of have to know what kind of artist you want to be, because if you're someone that wants to make work and not compromise on that work and show it, and that's what it is, this doesn't seem to be the world for you. You have to compromise and
Feedback.
get and
Mhm,
take
mhm.
feedback, and you don't like you said, if you don't like it, okay, I can do something different. And it is like a commission base, or it seems sort of that. So, but the upside to that is that your work is being seen by thousands and thousands of people,
Mhm.
as opposed to maybe someone that doesn't compromise. Maybe they'll
Mhm.
get a gallery show. It'll be seen for a couple months,
Mhm.
and
That's
that's
it.
it.
Mhm.
So so as the artist, you really have to say what what kind of person
What kind of ego you have?
what kind of ego what kind of ego do I have, and then go from there. And then you have to be but then you need the ego to persist to get these projects.
Art, it's almost besides the artistic execution. If you're going to submit, as you're looking at many things,
Mhm.
it's the creativity of the proposal,
Mhm.
and the idea behind the proposal,
Mhm.
that I think is interesting. And I think it's interesting that you said that one of the first pieces of public art you did was your first overtly political piece, because
Mhm.
you wouldn't think that was necessarily true, because so many times when you're working on public art,
Mhm.
in fact, you can sort of feel the reticence of the administrators who are running it, like, oh, we don't want to go into this, or we don't want
Mhm.
to go into that. Let's keep it pretty,
Mhm.
or let's keep it beautiful, but let's not really do something that's going to upset people. And so, to your point about the piece you did, you've done a series on immigrants,
Mhm.
that you could make the point without beating people over the head, and that the work
Yeah.
functions as being very beautiful,
Mhm.
and also very poignant, and also very pointed. And that's a very, if you're composing a Venn diagram, it's a small area in the middle where you can sort of bring those things together and have them be kind of acceptable in the realm of public art.
Public art, in other words, has to be safe. It has to be something that everybody can
I think
absorb.
there's an element to it. I mean, you
Mhm.
see a lot of
Mhm.
very edgy artists
Mhm.
who get derailed when they're
Mhm.
starting to do public art. We've certainly worked. I've worked with some of them, and they've had pieces taken down that were major
Mhm.
commissions because they went up, and 3 days later there was such a ruckus
Remember the
about it.
Oh,
Richard Serra?
vandalize.
The
Oh,
Richard
Yes,
the
I was
Serra
Richard
thinking Richard
Serra.
sculpture.
Serra's
Yes,
recently
definitely.
It
died.
was a great sculpture, but it
Uh-huh.
was on the way of people's paths.
Exactly.
Tilted
And
art.
people used to go from this coffee shop to that subway in a diagonal, and all of a sudden there's this curb obstructing their way.
The tilted art
It
piece
doesn't
was
matter how
interesting.
beautiful it is.
But of course, he didn't
That's
necessarily
ego
design it to
back.
be beautiful. He thought that was an incredibly ugly plaza, the federal plaza
Uh-huh.
it was
Uh-huh.
sitting in. And he, was on record as saying he wanted to make the plaza uglier, to sort of underscore the ugliness of the plaza. And that's all but though you see things where there's certain things where the artist wants to make a statement, aesthetic statement, political statement. They aren't the one who's going to have to live with it every day.
Yeah.
And so I remember once working on a piece for the Staten Island Ferry terminal, and the committee was in love with a piece that had a very aggressive audio component to it, and it was making
Mhm.
pointed facts, and it was pinging and ponging. Well, I used to take the ferry to work every day as a commuter, and I could think I would kill myself if I was there at 7 a.m. You barely can hold your head over the coffee, and the thing is sort of attacking you and pinging and ponging. And the art administrators have danced away after listening to it twice. And you thought, this person's going to be condemned to 10 years of riding this ferry
Yeah, that
with this
works.
kind of aggressive artistic statement. No one
That
wants that.
that happens in gallery shows too, when we are
Oh, yeah, my
installing it and you
God.
think, oh, this is great. And then you're this
Uh-huh.
third week of you sitting there and you're like, I'm gonna kill this person. But also time kills artists. Like the committee I was working on just getting a mural on the side of the building that the gallery was in the East Village when I was running that gallery. And just to get all the approvals to get that mural there,
Mhm.
and it was taking time and time, and then artists were dropping out. They had to go on to something else. They had to go, and so that was also such an issue of like, just, the time it takes to actually get that
Oh,
time to implement something.
absolutely.
And then your political statement, is it relevant after 3 years of applying and preparing and approving? And no, I mean, that's also something
The
that's
moment has gone by. I mean,
yeah.
we see that with exhibition planning. I mean, we work on
Oh,
a
yeah.
2 to 3 year schedule where
Mhm.
and you don't
The
want to do
piece is not
anything
there.
too topical, because by the time it finally comes to fruition and you've raised the money to mount it, that the moment may very well be past, or that someone else has gotten there first and done it in a more interesting, more urgent fashion.
I just want to recap a little bit and something that what I've understood from this, what I gathered. It's public art is tons of work, and you need to have thick skin. You need to be able to put up with rejections. And also, I feel like you have to be working in the building where the people are that are going to be hiring the people that are going to be showing the work.
No, I don't think
No.
that's true.
Yes, I think so. I think knowing the people in the building is a helpful thing, especially since you have so many submissions.
Well, I think having a name is a helpful thing. I think that the people who are art experts on your panel are going to say, "Oh, that's a very well-known person. That's a very well-known person." I mean, I've worked with public art projects where they're thinking about building a collection from a curatorial point of view, and so they're
Mhm.
looking for, in some way, the most prestigious people they can get, people who are going to last the span of time. Where if they're going to put together, as you said, a book, that book is going to have a wide variety of people, and that they're going to be the prominent people. I mean, there's that. There's also the element of finance in all of this. Is it possible to keep yourself going, to keep body and soul together, just being a public artist? I mean, do you think that the commission's large enough? Would that be a feasible route for an artist
I have a few friends who they
who do
they
that?
do that, and
Yes.
they're not such a huge names. They're happy, uh, happy making great work. Um, they both happen to be Asian, actually.
Well, success breeds success, and certainly when you're working with big agencies, if you've sort of done, this person did the Seattle airport, okay, well then let's consider them for LaGuardia, because they know they've gone through a multi-year process. They haven't melted down. They haven't exhibited what we call artistic temperament. They're able to work. They're able to bring it in time, on budget, make the adjustments. And I think once you get known for those sorts of things, then
It's like the ball
administrators
rolling.
who might be a little bit timid about taking a chance on someone new with a large project are going to feel reassured that you've got a list of them behind you. I mean, do you feel like you've reached that point in your career where they can say, "Oh, you've done, a couple of
Patricia
dozen."
delivers. You deliver.
You deliver.
And you've been there, you've done that, so then that brings you another job.
To the point that is, you live I think as an artist you cannot just live with just making public art or just making this one thing. I mean, I'm an artist myself, and then I just like, not that I get bored, but I want to do this. I want to do this other thing. I want to just jumping around. If you're an emergent artist or even mid career, you have to diversify. It's even if you think about, if you look at artists who are doing very well, let's say in the commercial world, they have at least one gallery in New York, but they're spread out. I was an agent for many years and it was great because that gave me a little seed of money to even put it towards my public art pieces. With public art pieces, you need a seed money. Besides, they don't pay you right away. So it depends. And actually, I heard from a friend that she had to invoice the DOT. She hasn't invoiced the DOT. And like, you haven't, but they didn't send you money in advance because something happened. I was about to ask her, like, you need money to make the work, to make yourself available that day to make the work.
Right.
She did something very interesting in Earth Day. So, and also we did, Nancy and I, we had also did an activity for Earth Day, and also we bought supplies, $300 worth of supplies, like things like that. You need to have a little funding there to always access to and do this thing. Otherwise, you won't work. Really, being an artist very much is no different to have a little company, little business. You have to have all these little things. If you're in a big city, right? You don't have a big sponsor paying your, and I don't know.
It's funny you should say
Monthly.
being an artist is like being a little business, because I was just reading an article about how many artists are incorporating to have their own business, and that's not something they really teach in art school usually.
I've been in collectives that have done performance art, and we kind of partner with developers that have buildings that are sitting empty, and they're trying to just have something happen there. And it's been like this weird sort of, the capitalist,
The dregs of capitalism can be used,
can
and
be
the scraps
used
can be making art.
to make art. And we had like this performance festival, and now is what is like an Amazon building. But Yeah, and I guess performance-wise, I I I I think it's lovely to be excited about showing your work to so many people and getting political or not political, getting to voice what your ideas are and your creativity, and whatever the audience hears can be very different. We're all sort of in our own bubbles, but
You mean from what the artist's intent
what
may
the
be?
intent
Yeah.
is, like, you know
I tried to get a gig in performance art, not performance art. I don't know what it was. It was the Paris Metro, and there was a whole
Was it mime,
opportunity.
Claudia?
What?
Was it mime?
it was a sound
It
piece,
was a
which
sound.
maybe
Well,
also is a problem.
it occurred to me that I could have like one of these squares that you just like you click and you go somewhere else. You know that
QR
a
code.
QR code. I could have a QR code, and then you're riding the subway. You see my QR code. You click on it, and it takes you to my voice, and I recorded it, many times in all the languages on how to meditate. And it was like
Nice.
and my idea was to give to the metro riders my mantra for free because I paid for my mantra. I went through a TM class, transcendental meditation. I took 4 days of transcendental meditation, and they taught me how to meditate. And I sometimes meditate. I wish I did it more religiously, but I enjoy meditating. And so the big deal is the mantra. They give you this mantra. So my idea is to give my mantra to the world for free. But when I was doing this pitch to the metro people, to the Paris Metro, I stupidly mentioned that the course cost me $1,400. And that destroyed me. I was no longer in contention. Because an artist is supposed to be poor, doesn't have $1,400 to go learn some.
Tell that to Diego
Transcendental
Rivera.
meditation.
Diego Rivera was not poor.
Not at all.
I know, but that when the
Frida
minute-
Kahlo was not
weird.
poor.
I said 1,400 and it was over.
No,
I was like
I think
crossed like
that's-
that with an X.
I think
Oh
that's
no,
your
my
own
my art dealer
neuroses.
told me.
Your art
Oh.
dealer is your art dealer is.
Let's cut that.
Not all that, yes. Oh.
I would never be able to do public art because I don't like people enough.